Look for where the opportunities are that the people that are currently already winning aren't executing on, because that's where you can beat them and create that advantage that they're not going to be able to catch up with. So whether that's chatbots or personalization of the website based on triggers that you can ping against machine learning models and things like that, those are all things that your big competitors can't do. So get in there and use that to your advantage and snatch some of their market.
Hello, everybody. We have the pleasure of welcoming Michael King to our interview series. I'm Rahul from the Engati team. So before we begin, at the end of the podcast, there's something really special for all our viewers. So make sure you stick to the end of the whole video and you will find something really special for you out there. All right, so let's begin with just a little quick introduction of what Engati is. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform available across 14 channels with 25,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. We run the Engati blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 300,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Michael, or Mike as he likes to be called, is a marketing technologist. He leads an agency called iPullRank, which specializes in content strategies, audience research, social media, SEO, and more. Mike also consults Fortune 500 brands, is a keynote speaker, a rapper. In his previous roles, Mike led the expansion of enterprise SEO and digital strategy offerings, as well as in-house marketing initiatives. Mike, it's such a pleasure to have you on board today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
That's great. So let's just jump on to the first question right away.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the pandemic is going to change the business landscape post-crisis, and how will digital marketing grow?
Yeah, I think one of the things to understand is that we're not going to go back to normal. I think that there's going to be a lot of new habits that users, people in general, are going to be developing over the time of being at home. It makes me question a lot of the institutions that we have in the world right now. If you think about movies, for instance, right? There's been a trend, at least in America, I don't know about the rest of the world, but there's been a trend where people have been trying to make movie theaters a lot more like being at home. They'll serve you liquor, they'll serve you food and all that stuff right in your chair, super comfortable chair that leans all the way back and things like that. Well, what we've been finding in the States is that, a lot of the movie theaters are starting to go out of business because of this new model. There are these smaller movie theaters that are doing what I just described, whereas the biggest movie theater company in America just filed for bankruptcy. And so what's also been happening is, because there's no movie theaters opening, a lot of these movie studios have been going direct to stream. So, you now have the in-home experience with a movie because you're at home. So why should we continue to have things like movie theaters if it's not something that really makes sense or add value? Now, if you apply that to businesses in general, well, there's a lot of people that still do sales meetings in person. Well, for the last month and a half, you haven't been able to do a sales meeting in person. And so people are seeing that as being more valuable as well. Why should I have to spend the time to have this meeting where you show up in my office and, you try to dazzle me and hard close me when I can do it from the comfort of my desk? So I think we're going to see a lot of behavioral trends that impact business dramatically. And businesses have to be, very much into listening to what their customers need and using that to inform how they should do business moving forward.
Right. So what you're trying to say is a lot of this corporate, packaging of the things are going to go away, and it's going to be more as per the employees and all of that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more of people having the ability to self-serve on more things because it makes sense. And I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for automating things and finding efficiencies. And in a lot of ways, what the pandemic is going to do is fast forward a lot of the things that we were worried about. I think that businesses are realizing there were too many things that had to be done in person, or there were too many things that you had a person doing, that, machine learning, AI can help you eliminate those roles so that you're not so beholden to those people. If you think about like customer service as an example,
Right.
that's been incredibly difficult in this time because of the fact that, and again, this is in America specifically, we've had a lot of, these government programs, people trying to get money from the government, and it's been incredibly difficult to like communicate with banks, and you can't get someone on the phone. Well, this is a good opportunity for banks to really have a more robust and automated solution. So I think we're going to see just a lot more of that happening after this is all over.
Right, right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. All right, jumping on to the next one. So, Mike, building a brand can be tough, right? So, what is the process you follow for brand creation when you help customers build a comprehensive digital marketing strategy?
Yeah, everything we do, it starts from the audience, like really trying to understand who the pockets of the audience are, what is it that they want, and then how does that overlap with what the business does.
Right.
And, there's, the brand building from a perspective of like, how do we market this brand? And there's also the brand building of like how this brand looks and sounds and so on. And so we go on both of those paths. Like when we talk about content strategy, we're working through the voice and tone of the brand so that we can all be consistent on how this brand sounds. And so whenever you see it, it's that brand, right? And
Right.
then the other component of it is like, okay, what messaging are we putting out there to effectively meet the needs of those users or those people in the audience that we've identified? So I think it's two parts, and you're definitely dealing with a variety of different teams to make this consistent and comprehensive across a business. And I think that's one of the problems that is still difficult to solve when you're working with bigger businesses, because everybody has a hand in this, and you got to bring everybody together and be like, no, 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 no. Here's how we're going to sound, and then here's how we're going to put the systems in place so that we make sure that we always sound that way. So I think that part of it is just like a comprehensive strategy. And then part of it is really just committing to putting those messages out there in a variety of formats that your audience actually wants, so that they're always able to find you when they're thinking about whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish that aligns with your brand.
Right. So, in short, like you also trying to say that you got to be available at all channels wherever your audience can be. You can't miss out on any of the social channels out there, right? Because there are a lot of them.
Yeah, as long as your audience is actually in those channels, you definitely need to be there. If you've got an audience that's not on LinkedIn, then don't waste your money and time on LinkedIn. But that's again where I think that audience research comes into play, so you can verify and validate that your audience is actually there, so you know where you need to be active.
Yeah, yeah. True said. All right. So, what role does AI and technology play in acting as an aid for business?
I think it is very valuable with respect to, data analysis, uncovering insights that you otherwise wouldn't be able to if you just put an analyst at a desk and give them Excel. Obviously, they're going to be limited in the type of insights they can develop. But, there's just so many ways that you can build a model that will tell you something that you wouldn't have otherwise identified. And the other component of it is, excuse me, like scalable solutions.
Right.
If it's things like, chatbots, or things like personalization, and a variety of other use cases where you can, allow technology to make something more specific to whoever you're talking to, that's going to resonate with your audience even more. People have this expectation at this point that they're giving so much data, they are making their opinions and interests and attitudes known. They expect the internet to reflect that back to them. And so that's where these technologies can really help you make that happen.
Right. Right. Got it. Mike, you always talk about why SEO content is not a thing, right? So, can you elaborate more on this?
Yeah, I think the idea of SEO content comes from, back in the day where it's just like, okay, you make every keyword a page, and it's a page that people don't actually really want to read, but it's a gateway to get them in the door so you can get them to the content you actually care about. And I think that this line of thinking is still like prevalent, especially at big brands where there are people who, maybe learned about SEO in like 2006 and don't know how much it's evolved. Um, and on the side of Google, they're just way more effective in understanding the context of your content, not just the fact that you have the keyword on the page 49 times. They know what the content is actually about. And then there's also the element that they use user signals as a determinant as to whether or not there's actual utility for that content. And so all of that adds up to this idea that you can't just write content for search engines and then kind of trick users into consuming it. You got to create content for actual people, and then also think of Google as an audience as well, so that you can account for everything and then have it be content that performs.
So what you're saying is you got to like actually provide value. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right. So how critical is the role of conversational AI in business strategies?
I don't think it's critical enough. I think that, people still think of uh, conversational marketing as like a nice to have, or something that's like, it's too difficult to do. And I think that there are just so many touch points where that can still be valuable, having some sort of like messenger application that you can plug into, or having it on your website, or having it as part of your social strategy. I think that stuff is incredibly impactful and a good way for people to get direct answers right away without the need of a direct intervention of a human, so that you can further qualify leads. You can drive people more to what it is that they want, and ultimately use that as an effective way to drive more business.
Right. But at the same time, like with situations like these, like with the lockdown and all of that, don't you think the role of conversational AI has become a little bit more critical?
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying. I think that it's something that not enough people are using, and it is incredibly critical. I think it's a good way to solve a lot of the problems that we have right now, like especially again with the idea of customer service, people not being able to get to the information that they want when there's a technology that can actually help that be more effective.
Yeah. All right. So here's another question on that, Mike. How are chatbots changing the way businesses interact with customers?
I think it is, again, just like a more personal experience, and it's a way for brands to create another channel, or create more control in another channel. So again, going back to the idea of like a messenger application on a social media platform, you can create a chat bot specifically for that. And then that way, user doesn't have to leave that platform to transact with you or to get information from your brand. So it creates another effectively like shared channel where you can control the messaging even better, but bring an even more personalized experience to that user, and then create another opportunity for your brand to meet its objectives. So I think it's incredibly helpful, valuable, and something that more brands should be thinking about. I think that more brands should be having chatbots on their own websites as well. Just again, as a mechanism to capture leads, or the mechanism to get people the exact information that they're looking for, so that they have a more positive brand experience.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, and you know what? Nowadays, anyway, the more personal your approach is, right, the more humanized it is towards your customer. I think that much is your percentage of being successful at the business that you're trying to make. And I think, we at Engati as well, right? So we make chatbots with technologies like NLP that actually hit the customer right, and they know what they're talking about. So it's a more personalized, humanized, approach towards your customer. I think that's really necessary these days.
Yeah,
Well,
100%.
yeah. All right. So how can great content and data be a game changer for any business, man?
Honestly, if you're not doing content effectively at this point, I'm not really sure what you're doing with marketing. I think that it's an absolute requirement that you generate content and also make that content data driven with respect to one, what you're talking about. Like there's just so much data on everything that you can tell a very compelling story with that. And then also the data that comes out of that experience, like how people interact with it, what they do with it, and then what it triggers, like what does it ultimately allow someone to do? What is the result that they get out of it? It's like just a continually layered data-driven story that you can tell. And I think every brand that's online, which it should be every brand, should be incorporating this into their strategy because people want to know how a business ticks, how they think, how are they approaching what they do, especially if it's a business that's trying to help you do the same thing. You know, let's say, for example, you're a business that, I can't think of an example. Let's say you're looking for a marketing agency and that marketing agency doesn't do marketing for themselves. Of course, you're going to think, you're like, okay, what can they do for me if they're not doing something for yourself?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for any brand to take that type of thinking and say, how can we drink our own Kool-Aid and leverage data and content effectively to show what it is that we do and how we can help you.
Right. Right. And I think anyway, like a lot of these, pioneers in the marketing game, like even like Gary Vee, these guys have been focusing heavy on content and, and how it's going to drive success for you. And especially with the, and with the social media age anyway, I think it's, that's what like drives you for success.
Yeah, I think, there's just so much opportunity to help people determine how they think about things. I think that if you are introducing people to a technology, you have the opportunity to say, okay, here's how you can use this technology. Here's how you should be thinking about this technology. And that serves two purposes. One, you're educating people. And two, you're also like educating people in the way that you think about the product. So when they go into the marketplace and they're like, hey, I'm looking for this thing, they have expectations that your content created around that thing.
That's correct. That's correct. All right, moving on to the next question. What is the current and what could be the future trend in digital marketing strategy?
I mean, that's a really wide question. I think the trend is that people are, again, getting more data driven. I think that there are a lot of organizations that are still very, very early in that. We talk about things like big data and machine learning and so on. And so many organizations like those as concepts, but there's just so many things that keep them from being able to execute on that. There's a lot of legal ramifications that come with collecting data, using data, and so on. So I think that we're still early in seeing a lot of businesses get to the point of really executing on a lot of these things. But at the same time, when you've got organizations that are built from technology and built from data, you see how they're like further along than everyone else because they're able to execute on things like this. If you think about Google and how they've become more of a machine learning driven company, it's impacted every single product that they have. And it's also, of course, impacted their marketing. So I think that the real trend is that there are people that are still like doing things that, the way you've always done it, but you're seeing more and more like, I don't want to say early adopters because we're past that phase, but you're seeing more people have the technology as a unfair advantage for other companies that just can't get it done. So I think that the reality here is that the more agile and smaller companies are continuing to do the more interesting things, whether that be content, data, their paid media targeting strategies, using chatbots and things like that. Whereas like the bigger companies are slow to get on top of that stuff.
Yeah, that's correct. All right, Mike, this was a fantastic conversation. I just have one more question left. Do you have any other thoughts or sound bites that you would like to leave our users with?
Yeah, I think that soundbite would be, look for where the opportunities are that the people that are currently already winning aren't executing on, because that's where you can beat them and create that advantage that they're not going to be able to catch up with. So whether that's chatbots or personalization of the website based on triggers that you can ping against machine learning models and things like that. Those are all things that your big competitors can't do. So get in there and use that to your advantage and snatch some of their market share.
That's great. That's great. All right. Thank you so much for doing this, Mike. To all the viewers who are like, stay tuned till the end. We have a very special ebook that we have written on customer service and engagement. So that's there for you, free of cost, in the description. So go check that out. It's completely free. Use this time to better yourself at whatever you're doing. Thank you so much, Mike. Again, we really appreciate your insights over here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.